Here we go. Okay. All right. So this just, okay, so this is like a real starting point to presenting an offer and how to connect and communicate. There are definitely times as a listing agent where you've got a property and all of a sudden, like literally there's been no communication, nothing, and an email comes through and it's got an offer in it. And you're just totally thrown. You're just like, what? Like, did these people even show the property? Where did this come from? This is so strange, because to think that you're going to buy something, which in our marketplace is like basically $1 million, and not have any communication with the other side at all and just send through an offer seems really strange. So I would say never do that, ever. You can always get so much information by making a phone call, sending an email, having a discussion. Remember, you're always working for your clients. And at the end of the day, yes, people don't have to answer the question, but it doesn't hurt to ask. To say flat out, like, hey, you guys have been on the market for like over 90 days now, and I see you haven't done any price changes. My clients are really interested in the property and would like to make an offer, but we'd like to understand your seller's motivation first and whether they have a bottom line. Listing agent can say, well, I don't know, but chances are they'll say, why don't I go have a chat with my client and get back to you? And rather than just, either dismissing it and not doing anything, or sending something in that's going to, as we know, human egos are involved in this. And when we send in low offers, sellers tend to get their backs up. I always like to say that any offer is a starting point. Okay, so let's assume that you are the listing agent in this circumstance, and a buyer brings you an offer that's like a lot lower than the asking price. All that is it's an open dialogue. They've opened a dialogue for conversation. And a lot of people want to start low because their mentality is, if I don't at least try for this and start this way, then I'll always feel bad for having gone in at the higher price in the starting point. So a good communication at that point with your sellers is to say, listen, this is just an open dialogue. We'll sign back at a price that we think is fair and reasonable, that we feel is okay, and see what they decide to do at that point. If it doesn't go anywhere, if they don't change where they're at, that's okay, no skin off our backs. It's a few signatures and it doesn't tie us to anything in particular, but it's worth trying. So basically, with nothing on paper, you've got nothing. With something on paper, there's a potential of making a deal happen. Does that make sense? And the key to all of this that's so important is for us as the realtors to remember that it's not about us. It's not about our own emotions in any of this. The more level and even we can stay, the more ability we're going to have to get the deal done. Because a lot of realtors let their own emotions come into play in all of this. And when they do, that's when there's nasty talk going back and forth, nasty emails, all that kind of stuff. And again, they've lost sight of the end goal, just to help their clients achieve their goals, not their own. So the goal is to kind of keep all of that at bay. And honestly, it's not easy. We're human beings. And I would say that, I know that there's so much real estate education and coaching and guidance on that kind of stuff, but I would highly recommend using something like TED Talks. There's so much stuff out there now to do some stuff on emotional intelligence and watching videos on that kind of stuff, because that's where you can gain your edge in all of this and really start getting deals done. Because your goal isn't to write offers, your goal is to actually get them accepted. And that's a big difference there. Any comments or thoughts right now from anybody?
I guess it's just because I haven't actually seen anything happen right now, but how is that process happening now? Like, instead of going in and handing in an offer, like you're just emailing it off basically, right?
Yeah, so far I haven't heard any of the agents say they've used Zoom or FaceTime to present the offer. It's strictly been an email and conversations and discussions with the listing agent. But I would recommend, like, if you're going to be doing an offer, recommend that you sit there and do a Zoom call or a FaceTime if you can. Because again, it just allows you to get face to face with the client.
And may add that one extra, thing that other people aren't doing too.
Exactly. Setting yourself apart. Absolutely. Yeah, Rita.
So, yeah. Just a quick question. I had one listing. Then I got one very low ball offer. it's like the price listed was around 1.6 million property, and the offer came in like 1.3. So how do we deal with this kind of buyer agent? Like, well, because seriously, it's not a realistic price, right? To go ahead with the offer. What's your opinion, like when you receive a lowball offer like that?
Well, okay, so one, when an offer comes in really low, as the listing agent, remove yourself from it and go back to your initial homework on when you valued that property. And what was the price that you felt was the fair price for that property when you first started, before your clients influenced you? Okay, I would start with that. Because a lot of times we know we come up with a price that we think is the right price for the property. Then we go and we sit with our clients, and our clients say, oh, I was thinking a little bit more than that. I was thinking a little bit more. Let's ask a little bit more. And then as soon as that price goes down on paper, all of a sudden in their heads, that's the new value of the home. Okay. So I would start with that, number one, because maybe it's not as low as it seems. Mm-hmm. Two, at that point, I would say to my sellers, I would say, listen, let's go back to the comps that we reviewed. And take a look at whether they've come out at a number that is extremely low, or whether it's actually reasonable starting point, right? So go there next if you feel like you need to. At the end of the day, if it's worth 1.6 and they come in at 1.3, you have options. You can say, hey, listen, we thank you for your offer. Thank you for taking the time for putting this on paper and for showing it. I'm going to send you my comps for the property, because we've actually done a really thorough evaluation of this property and what it's worth. And maybe you're not seeing the same ones. So I'm going to send them to you, because I've spent a lot of time on this. So you've got them and you can show them to your client, because the property is only. Does that make sense? Did I freeze?
Yeah, the freeze, I lost the last part.
Okay. So you're basically helping the buyer agent. You're giving them the information that you already have, because you've spent a lot of time on it.
Right.
Okay. And again, this just goes, yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Sorry, when you say comps, you mean the CMA, right?
If you're using a CMA, yes. Yeah, absolutely. So here are the solds that we have used to price this property.
Okay.
Because realistically, as the listing agent, you've done a lot of homework on it. And you've got it available. So make it available to other people, because then it just helps them do their job and it helps you get the house sold. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, real basics, as we know, when we put in an offer, the offer can get signed back to us. It can be accepted. It can get, it could just die, right? So every offer, as we know, has an irrevocable period on it, a time frame. So two things that have to be on an offer to make it a legal offer. One, there has to be an exchange of funds. And two, there has to be a time frame. The exchange of funds is the deposit on the offer. So you offer a certain price, of course, but then you say that you're going to give a deposit. If you, as a listing agent, do an offer online, okay, and you don't have the deposit in hand, and then the next day the deposit doesn't show up, and you call the buyer agent, you say, hey, we're in our 24-hour period here and your money hasn't shown up yet, where is it? And the buyer agent says, sorry, buyer's got cold feet, you're out of an offer. Of course, you could attempt to chase these people down and try and get something out of them, but never seen it happen. And the amount of time and effort and energy to try and do that is not worth it. If you have check in hand, and this is why the old school way is a bit better for this, where you present an offer with a certified check, like attached to the offer. And that way, if you accept that offer, you've got that money in hand right now. You've got a lot more ground to stand on if those buyers decided to make a change to something.
How often are people presenting the checks upon acceptance versus herewith?
Well, upon acceptance is more of a reality when it's going to be a tech age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I mean, in a competition situation, so if you're a buyer agent and you're going in to buy a property, and even if it's online, I would absolutely still get your clients to get a bank draft, take a picture of it, and include that with your offer.
Mm-hmm. Just to be taken a little bit more seriously. Yeah.
Absolutely. It might cost $15, I think, to the clients if they have to return it or something, but it's a gimme.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Never show up to a multiple situation without cash in hand.
Just a comment, if I may. I came from a market where up until not that long ago, where $1,000 deposits were acceptable, more now 5,000. And I mean, I'm seeing now, being in the Toronto market, deposits were substantially larger than what many people's down payments used to be.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd share that. I became licensed back in 2000, and my first few sales were $100,000 starter homes. So that's just a little bit of just a comment.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the deposits are relative to price for sure. What happened in Toronto is the kind of unwritten rule of a 5% deposit was established to actually cover commissions as a starting point so that you were protected and you would get paid. That being said, what a lot of realtors have been doing now, actually, and it became apparent when all of a sudden you sell a property and you realize your seller has no equity in the property and no money to pay anyone. You do more than 5% because there's also, remember, HST, which adds up quite a bit on big properties. So, taking 6% deposit is kind of more of a standard in Toronto now. And then beyond that, it shows the sellers that you're really serious. So there's two ways of doing deposits. One is that you give the full deposit at one shot, like within 24 hours. The other option is that you can do a further deposit at a later date. So let's just say that your client's money is, for instance, in how they can take out money out of the RSP, or let's say it's in a stock, or it's coming in as a bonus from work in like 30 days. You can write into the offer that they'll give a further deposit of X amount by this date. And again, that can help sellers feel more comfortable about selling to that person. Okay. And usually that's done with longer closing dates. So if you've got a longer closing, that's a common practice with deposits. What are some of the standard conditions that we would see on offers these days? Anyone want to speak up on that a little bit?
Financial clauses.
Yeah.
Home inspections.
Mm-hmm.
What else? Well, right now in the virtual age, right now, they need to do one walkthrough before closing, right? Because some people are not seeing the property when they put an offer in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right now, depending on the property of the deal, a lawyer review is also okay and safe to do, depending on whether they've seen it or not, all that kind of stuff. Surveys. So it's never been a thing here that you have to sell with a survey. In some markets, Jay, is it out west that you have to do that?
That it's usually subject to title search or having the title search reviewed and signed off by the buyer before an offer is made that they're satisfied with it. The lawyers do not investigate except more or less the day before closing, and that's really the buyer's representative's responsibility to go over the title completely or get third-party advice on it. Usually we're able to ascertain that, but if it gets really spotty, then to take it to a lawyer or make it subject to title search, usually.
Yeah. So lawyers used to do a full title search where they would go do quite a deep dive here. Now it's a real basic dive, and that's why title insurance has become such a big thing. So as you'll see, you cannot buy a property without taking out title insurance now, which covers you for any things that didn't come up in that kind of just basic title search that the lawyer's office does. And surveys are not necessary. You do not need to have a survey to sell. It's always an important question to ask your sellers if they have one, because if they do, it's added value. It might be from 1940, and that's okay. It's just that that in the agreement, if you're including it in there, it says existing, because there's a clause that asks for a new survey to be done. And if a buyer is asking for that, make sure that your seller is okay with that, because there's a cost associated with it, obviously. Anywhere from $1,500 and up, depending on the survey. So it's worth asking as a buyer agent, do you have a survey for your property? And again, you're helping do the due diligence for your client, because I have been in a situation in the past where I didn't ask. And the buyers obviously someone said something to them, and they said, well, I don't know, we don't have one. We're going to check with our agent. And it wasn't in the offer. I hadn't asked for it in the offer. So they weren't very happy with me that I hadn't asked for the survey.
Isn't it in the agreement of purchase and sale? Isn't there a clause that says that the seller must present a survey if they have it in their possession?
It's a clause that can be added to your schedule.
I could have sworn I was going through it, because I'm trying to learn to make sure I know all not the clauses, maybe I'm using it's in the contract, in the APS, I could swear. And it says that if the seller.
In standard form?
Yes. Like the OREO Form 100 APS. I'm going to look, I'm going to look it up right now. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay. That would be new if it is. In my career, it's always been that it's in your schedule and you ask for it in the schedule.
Okay.
But
update me, because you're more up on this on an APS than I am these days.
There's another story. When I worked for the Calgary Planning and Building Department out west, surveys were required. And one of my tasks was to review surveys on compliance to the zoning bylaw. And if there was any non-compliance, that would potentially halt the sale. So, or RPR, real property report, as they were called, were an absolute requirement in Calgary. So refreshing being back in this market where Stewart title, I think it's called, is what's granted by in lieu of a survey, which is a little less likely.
And if you can call the city, and sometimes there's surveys actually on file for properties from at some point when it was done. So it's possible to actually get a copy as well. So you can kind of do a bit of sleuth work and see what you can find. Yeah. Is everyone using web forms to write up their offers? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's the best thing to do because it's, live anywhere. You can be out showing a house and sit at your client's computer and do it there as an example, or open your laptop, and it's on the web, right? So, and what's good about web forms is that it's always up to date with the forms and the clauses. It isn't the best layout and format. I gotta admit, whoever designed it is not a realtor, I would say. So it does take some playing around with, and it's a bit tricky, but once you get it, it's okay. But in order to get it up to speed and get it going, you can always schedule a time with Danielle at the office. She can take you through it, get all your standard stuff like in folders and ready to go. So you've got everything you need for a buyer or a seller, for instance, all the documents that would go with it, so that you're all set up and ready to go. And again, it just takes practice. So honestly, a really good thing to do is, as you're looking at the new listings and what's coming out, just pull one and just do up an offer for it and practice, because there's nothing worse than the pressure you feel when you've got to do it in a real circumstance and you haven't practiced yet. So please do practice. and put yourself out there. Go to our Facebook group, our feed, and put yourself out there to agents that are doing a lot of sales and say, hey, I'm a newbie and I'd like some practice. Anyone doing an offer that I can shadow you on, or I'd love to type up the offer for you as a practice thing. So put yourself out there and ingratiate yourself to the agents that have a lot of work. Katie, you're still looking?
Yes, I found it right here.
Okay, so which clause is it?
It says it's number 12, and it does say here, because I went to because AREA has this like forms explained. So basically they give you the Coles Notes versions, and the forms explained is not good, because the forms explained says like their Coles Note version says the sellers to deliver to the buyer documents in the seller's possession respecting the property. This would include copies of surveys and deeds. But when you look at the actual contract, not the Coles Notes that AREA is providing, it says if requested by buyer, seller will deliver any sketch or survey of the property. Okay, so I have to be careful there, because I just read the Coles Notes and I'm like, oh, they have to, and now I see in the fine print it says if requested by buyer.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so yes, it is on the onus of the buyer agent to request it then. Okay, good. Thanks for checking that.
No, thanks for bringing that up. It's good to clarify that.
Yeah, never leave anything to chance in this business.
Yeah.
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Fact check, ask questions. If you're unsure, just pick up the phone and call someone. If you're in a situation and it doesn't feel right, well, chances are something's off. And I've been there a bunch of times where I feel like the listing agent is being dishonest or something's going on. So the key to always is to step back and try to like look at the picture and keep in mind what do I need to do to help my client here, and be honest with them and share what you need to with them, obviously. But if something's off, it probably is. So just be careful.
Trust your instincts, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. Especially at a time right now, again, I'll just go back to a lot of people are not making money right now. And so a lot of people are hungry to make money. And so they're doing things that they might not have done, just out of desperation. So just be really careful when you're representing people, because it's an important thing you're doing. You're taking on like a big thing for them. So web forms, yes. So everyone's using web forms. That's great. There was something called Easy Offer and a few other things like that back in the day that was like, came in on a disc, and it was what we used to use before web forms was out. But now that web forms is here, it's great. Everything's up to date in there. And again, Daniela can totally get you up to speed for that. So in the booklet for today, they have a checklist for preparing an offer. It's worth taking a look at. I mean, the real basics, as we know, but which should actually be happening at your first appointment with these people, where we're getting them to sign the BRA, is asking them for their ID, so that we're putting it down on FinTrack. Not leaving that till any later. And deciding, creating your own checklist and using this as a framework for what it is that you are going to be doing step 1, step 2, step 3 when you're doing an offer, so that you don't miss anything. So for instance, ask for a survey. In your conditions, for instance, even if you ask for it, the sellers might cross it out because they might say, number 1, we don't have one. We're taking it out. Okay. Or number 2, we do have one. Here it is right now, hand it over to you. And they might ask you to sign off on the fact that they've handed it to you. And again, they'll still take it out of the offer. Okay. So just make a checklist of all the things that you don't want to miss. And keep everything in writing as much as you can. So an example of that might be your buyers want to buy a house in a specific school zone. And so you've looked online, it says, yes, this address goes to this school. Send it all to them in writing. But a part of that would be a disclaimer that school zones can change. And they're buying the house today and you're closing in 4 months, let's say. If there's a big meeting and the change that takes place, they're aware of that and are okay with that concept. So you always want to kind of make sure you're disclosing everything that you have available to you.
would that go in the disclosure, like included in the buyer representation agreement, or just on a piece of paper and they sign it so that you have it, or does it go, like, where would this go?
Well, if it's just in communications back and forth with your client, an email is okay, as long as it's in writing.
Okay.
If it doesn't need to be a sign-off thing.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you've got your stuff in writing. So on your, if everyone uses Gmail, on your Gmail, you create a folder called clients and you put each of your clients' names in there. And for me, for buyers, I would use name. For sellers, I generally use address, just because that's how it worked in my brain. And so every communication with those people got saved over those files, everything. And keep it all. You never know what might come back. So if you've kept it all, then you're safe. You've got everything to go back to. So just create that little folder for yourself. Yeah. What if, is there anybody, anyone here that has like something about writing the offer that they're always confused by, or they want some clarity on or help on? Is there anything in an offer that you're not feeling confident about? I find that with condos, that's where you see some different things when it comes to like parking spots and lockers. Because a lot of times when you look at a parking spot and a locker, it has some kind of number on it, but the legal description for those might be completely different. So be really aware of that. Do a check. If parking and locker are owned, there is a deed to them, and you will find that as well. There'll be the condo, then there'll also be the parking and the locker. You'll find all of that. Use the legal description. If it's just use for while they're living there, then it'll be the spots usually that are on the spots as they are.
And keep an eye on unit number. Unit number in the legal description can be different from the municipal address unit number. So that's another thing.
Yeah. And I find with condos, things that people ask for where it's not common in a house, obviously, are things like a garage door opener, a fob, you know, extra things that go along with anything to do with a condo. Whereas with a house, you're getting keys, and generally the buyers will change the locks as soon as they move in anyways. So a little bit different there as to what you're asking for. And again, if you need to do an offer, ask one of your colleagues for a sample offer that they've done recently on either a freehold or a condo, and you can use that as your framework so that you've got something to compare to versus just doing one of it on your own out of the blue. Hi, Paige.
So Adrienne, I have a question about the lease offer.
Yeah.
When we took the course, we know you cannot ask for the deposit. You know, like the postage check. You're not supposed to ask for that, right? But all the offers I've seen, it's always there.
Yeah.
You need to provide 10 postage check, blah blah blah, right? So I just not sure, you know, is that still okay to do that?
Well, it's technically not, but at the same time, if they're offer, then they're agreeing to it. So as the buyer, the person representing the tenant, if they actually don't want to be doing that, then cross that out. If they're okay with doing that, then you can leave it in. Me personally, as a landlord, I don't include that in any, and even if they include it, I just say, listen, why don't we switch this to e-transfer monthly, you know? And again, it will depend on the landlord. If the landlord's old school, then they're probably going to want their post-dated checks. Kind of a pain in the butt, but they might. If they're not, then they'll be open to e-transfer.
Okay.
Yeah. One of our agents this week was doing a lease offer for a tenant to rent a house, and on the schedule, and this is now that it's happened, it's interesting. A few people have said they've used this, where there's a clause that states the landlord is not responsible if the tenant dies in the property, basically. So if like anything causes death in the property, And they were like, well, what does that mean? And they kind of stepped back a little bit like, geez Louise, like, you know, light fire the place while we're in there. Like, this is weird. But again, there's so many disclaimers out there, right, to take the onus off of the landlord, because most of everything out there really protects the tenant. There isn't nearly as much protection for the landlord anymore. The tenant has a lot more protection. So with any of these things, it's just a matter of kind of reading through them and looking at the bigger picture of, well, you know, if you happen to be in the house and light a candle and fall asleep and let the candle burn down and then the house burns and you happen to be in here when that happens, the landlord doesn't want to have to take responsibility for that. Now, of course, the landlord has his insurance, tenant has their insurance, all of that. But all of these clauses are out there, and a lot of realtors have put them in even a long time ago, potentially, and they just use them over and over and over again. So it's really about the two parties and whether they feel comfortable with what's said there or not.
Right.
It was a weird situation where it's a house that they're renting, and the landlord had like 2 or 3 rooms in the basement that are locked up, and he's renting the house minus those 3 rooms. I was like, well, you might want to look in the rooms at least, because here's this young family moving into this house to live there, and he's got these rooms. Well, what's in them, and how often does he want to access them? And so I said, if you're going to do this, I would at least ask for a visual into the rooms to confirm you're okay with what's in there,
Right.
rather than not. Because again, like, that's a bit of a red flag to me personally. I've never heard that one before. It's different on like an Airbnb, you know, when people live there and then they let people come in and they lock up their stuff. That's really common, but not when you're renting a house for like a year or 2. Not as common. Yeah.
A tip that I got with leases in terms of like what's allowed and what's not is like, you basically bring it to whoever you're representing to live there and be like, is it worth you fighting or arguing over the post-dated checks or whatever to not get this place? Or are you okay with just giving the post-dated checks if that means you can have the place? Like, it just depends on the moral values, I guess, of the person that wants to rent, to see if they do want to push back against what they can't be asked or not.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It does become a bit of a power struggle sometimes. And honestly, sometimes leases are harder to get done than sales, which is so interesting. But a lot of times that is the case. So again, it's just letting them know what their rights are, how it's written. Is this really a big deal? As you said, Brad, absolutely. Yeah. This is a little trick that I use when getting people to sign the buyer representation agreement or a listing agreement. When I go in and put it in front of them, I've already highlighted all of the spots they're going to initial or sign or date. So whether you're sending them to them via DocuSign or sitting in front of them, when it's already highlighted and you start to tell them and explain the document, you know how they start to glass over and zone out at that legal talk, they're kind of like, whatever, you know, they'll just start initialing and signing without you even like saying, here's where you need to do it, because it's really clear to them because you've already highlighted it. So on an offer, do the same thing. Initial it all, highlight it all, and then they'll start doing that as you're taking them through it. It's just helpful to get them to pre-program them that way. But 2, don't ever have someone sign something without taking them through it. You've written up an offer, well, a few steps. 1, if someone else writes your offer, read it before you get anyone to sign it. And that being said, if you ask the admin to do an offer for you and you get it back, you should expect that there's mistakes. And I only say that from the perspective that you should absolutely be reading through it with a fine-tooth comb. You are the professional, you are the realtor, that is an admin person. They're there to do admin work. They're not there to qualify an offer, okay? So you read through your offer always. Now you've got it in front of your client, you take your client through the offer. The last thing you want is a client coming back saying, my agent never showed me the offer. They just told me to sign here and date there. They didn't actually read it through with me. So the key is that you do take them through, obviously, what everything means. Now, that being said, I'm not the broker, so I think I can say these things, although it is being recorded. On the pages that are like the pages that are like page 3, where you don't change anything, it's already all written out, let's say, right? So the way I would explain it when I showed them that page is that these offers were created by many in the legal profession over the years, and they're adjusted and changed and updated on a regular basis. As you can see, these agreements are used in the province of Ontario, so it's a standard form. Therefore, there are a number of standard clauses in the offer. So for instance, on this page, you can see numbers, blah, 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 through number. There's no room for us to add anything or change anything. This is all just part of the boilerplate of the offer, okay? And then initial at the bottom. Some clients, so like I'd say 3% of clients will want to read every single thing on that offer. Others will read part of it. And then another portion will just sign. They'll just listen to you and sign. So you kind of have to respect the client and their personality and what's important to them, okay?
And even the small pre-printed clauses that Katie referred to, clause 12, some have read through those and even crossed off sections in those very small pre-printed clauses.
Yeah.
When I used to do a number of power sales, and banks would cross off vast portions of the very small pre-printed too.
Mm-hmm.
So
actually, I find it makes deals difficult to get done when that starts to happen because it's not the norm. And when other agents see it, it's like a red flag for them. And also they start to feel like maybe the buyer is going to be difficult on other things as well. Therefore, do we really want to work with that person? So just be aware of that. You want to always encourage them not to do that. And if they're really feeling like something needs to be there, a good thing would be to connect with either the lawyer that's going to be representing them on the sale or a lawyer that you have connected with as like, we're going to do business and I'm going to send you people and we're going to work together. Ask them to get a bit of clarity, give them clarity on it so that ideally you don't have to change it. Yeah.
I mean, not that I would, but so can you actually like just scratch out basically everything but those two things that need to be there to make it a legal document?
If you wrote on paper, like on a blank paper, you could do a very basic agreement that has those things in it, yes. But as a realtor that has access to everything in a much more a way of really covering everybody's rights and protecting everybody, meaning you have access to the paperwork.
Oh yeah, not that I would ever do it, but like I could, like legally I could cross stuff out. It basically is all I was asking. Like it's, if other people do it, it's not like that's not allowed.
It boils down to what both parties are willing to agree to at the end of the day.
And the moment that each sign under the seals, where it says here and after, I hereby sign, and both sign, there's a meeting of the minds, there's a soon to be binding. So
yeah, absolutely. So we know that there's always a time frame. We know that we either provide the money herewith or within 24 hours. The reason real estate brokers don't like personal checks is because it takes so long to clear them. And if they've given us a personal check, but it's going to take 8 to 10 days to clear, then technically we don't have the money yet. Whereas a certified check or a bank draft, we've got the money. In a bank draft, you can get at any branch. It doesn't need to be your home branch. Certified check, you need to be your home branch. So those are kind of out. But bank drafts, you can get anywhere. The other thing to know about the money, when you're meeting with your buyers, if their money, their deposit money is sitting in a PC Financial or one of these more alternative lenders or banks, their best bet is to actually move it over to a traditional bank where they can access the money immediately. Because in a lot of circumstances like that, it takes a few days to get the money. So you want to make sure the money is accessible right away. As we know, cash is king in this business. So why don't we talk a little bit about why we might negotiate the offer based on a condition. So for instance, a condition of inspection. And now the inspection's taken place and it's come back, the reports come back. and the buyers have had a chance to review the report. And I would always also caution you, don't just send the report to your clients, read through it first so you know exactly what's in it, so that you can schedule a time to take your clients through the report. It can be super overwhelming to read a report like that. Inspectors include every little thing nowadays in these reports. And it seems silly a lot of the time, but ultimately they're just basically covering themselves. You know, they're bringing it to attention, whether it's a thing or not, just with like, I covered it off in the report. So what is key to that is helping your clients understand big nuggets versus little nuggets. So if there's big things, meaning high dollar amounts or things that you think materially affect the value of the property and the price that they've offered, those are very important things to make sure you're highlighting. Little things like, oh, there's a crack here, and well, house is cracked. We know that this happens. If there's, you know, they think that some downspouts need to be moved away from the house more. Well, that's no big deal. There's going to be a lot of things in that report. Every house needs maintenance, okay? Every house, even condos, there's going to be maintenance involved. So really it's a maintenance guide for your buyers, but it comes back, and of course your buyers didn't go up on the roof, and it comes back that the roof is like totally end of its life expectancy, and that's not something that they expected to have to do based on the purchase price that they offered. So that would be something you might decide to renegotiate the price with the sellers. And how we renegotiate those things, there's a few factors involved in that. You want to kind of decide what it is that you're going in with, okay? So it's like an offer. And usually you're going to ask for a certain amount of money, either off the price, or usually that's how it works, is you're going to take it off the purchase price, right? So that the other option too, obviously, is to say, okay, we want the sellers to just do it now before closing, get it done. So the only thing I would caution with that is that they might do it on like the cheaper route or not to the standards that the buyers want, that kind of thing. So a lot of times it's just better to have your buyers do it themselves. But again, it will depend on cash flow. So you'll have to figure that out with your client as to whether they've got the cash flow to do anything like this. If they do and they want it off the purchase price, you're going to go in and say, listen, we've reviewed the inspection report, which I've now forwarded to you. And this is funny, a lot of agents won't share inspection reports. They're very funny about it. It becomes like this like personal property that is not as shareable. But as far as I'm concerned, if we're about to ask for money off, I want them to see the report so it's really clear why we're feeling this way, and this is the reality of the property. So if they've got it in front of them, at least it's coming from the horse's mouth rather than from me, and it takes a bit of the pressure off me as the negotiator. So you know, here's the report in front of you. Clearly you can see that the roof that's on the house is at the end of its life expectancy, and we've been given no information about that leading up to this. Therefore, we feel that the value of the home is actually $15,000 less than what we had bought it for. So you're going to put a number out there. A lot of times this will happen initially through a conversation and then papered, or you might paper it, send it over, and then have the conversation at that point. It will depend on your relationship with the listing agent and how things have gone up until then, and your sense of what the best approach is going to be. And again, connect with a colleague on it, talk through it, and make the decision on how to approach it. And generally, it works, I would say, if you've got reasonable people that are obviously motivated to sell. Yeah. So I'm going to share a screen here. Let's see. Okay. I want to share. Okay. So I've created this document called Listing 101. And it's just basically step 1 through step 15, all about being a listing agent. And I've now sent it to Daniela, who's going to be uploading it to KWNR agents And it's all of the steps basically on everything that you do from step one to it's 15 steps for getting listings done. So that's going to be there. And it includes a lot of everything on there. It doesn't specifically talk about writing up an offer though, I'm just noticing. So there's definitely some areas that we can add to this. But this is a really good jump off point for understanding what all the steps are involved. And then we've also done the same for buyer agents.
Will we have access to the buyer agent document as well?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
She's going to put both up. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just a starting point. And then from there, we've got tons of other documents that she's going to be uploading in two sections. So listings and buyers, meaning like for listing agents and for buyer agents, and all the different documents that you might need and use at those times. So she's just working on that right now, and we'll have these up very shortly. In the meantime, though, I can ask her to just send this out. I just haven't done a read of it in the last little bit. But anyways, whatever. If there's a question about something there, just ask me, because some of it might be a bit outdated, and I need to do a full read through it, but I can definitely do that. But she can, to the people on the call today, I'll ask her to email them to you today. Okay?
That'd be awesome. Thank you. So I guess just because I've never met you before, you said you're not an agent anymore. Are you like a training coordinator or like?
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. That's a good point. A little background on me. So how did I lose everything here? Oh, I'm sharing my screen. That's why. Hold on a second here. Stop share. There we go. Okay. Everyone's back. So I started my real estate career, back when I was 27. My mom was in real estate for years and years and years, and my dad had joined her at this point. And so then I decided to get my real estate license. So I got my license, and just as I was doing my license, I also decided at that time to apply to do an MBA. So now applications were out for my MBA. I'm finishing my real estate career license, and I'm starting to trade. And I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm 27, making some money, you know, like this is pretty good. And so I decide, oh, I'm not going to do my MBA. I'm just going to continue with this and work on the sales. So I'm only a few months into it now, and I'm selling. And all of a sudden I come into the office one day, and on my desk, there's this welcome package from the University of Glasgow saying, Adrienne, we're looking forward to seeing you in 3 weeks. Here are the materials that you need to read ahead of time, and please let us know if you need help with anything. And I sat there looking at this box, you know, thinking this is a sign. I'm meant to do this. You know, I need to go do this. So off I go, and I went and did an MBA in Scotland, which I would highly recommend anyone to do. It was a lot of fun. It was really neat. Anyways, I came back from doing that and thought I would, because I did an MBA, I thought, oh, I've got to go work in the corporate world downtown. And my mom said, well, hold on a second here. Let me interview you and really give you a sense of what could be next for you in this business. So in the end, I decided to stick with the selling route. So from the age of 29 to 40, I was actively selling. Yeah, just over 40. So yeah, I was selling real estate, and my career started for me downtown. So I was living at King and Bathurst in a loft. That was my first purchase, $259,000 downtown, and I had 600 square feet of bliss. It was awesome. It was like high ceilings and cool and lots of fun. I was driving this little convertible BMW and just living the life. Everything was good. Real estate was on the up and up. You're all selling, making money. I would literally, like, because I was single, no kids, no partner, nothing. I was like, I had time. So I, would have a dinner party and literally, prep food and say to everybody, okay, here's what needs to happen. I'm off to do an offer and I'll be back. So it was really fun times. So that's where it started. Then I moved west and got more into houses with my mom and dad and selling in the West End. And then about, I guess it's been 7.5 years now. This is when the Keller Williams opportunity was presented to us. So we'd been with Remax originally, selling with Remax, and that was fine. I wouldn't say there was any bad part about that at all. The only thing there was that everyone was super competitive and not willing to share anything, like not even like a cleaner or something, like nothing. So it was very closed doors. You didn't really have colleagues. They were more competitors. So when Keller Williams came across our plate, we looked at it and said, this is awesome. This makes a lot of sense to us. So that's when Norm, my dad, and I opened this brokerage. So when we did that, I was still selling and I planned to continue selling, but then my sister joined and she started selling as well. And then I ended up with 3 kids that I wasn't planning on having. And so my life shifted and I looked at, okay, what's next for me? So now I'm in the leadership role at the brokerage now. Yeah, so I meet every day with Paige at the moment, and then with TL, which we're on the hunt for right now, in strategy, finances, and running the brokerage. So operational, all that stuff. Yeah, it's a very different side of things. It allows me, for me personally right now in my life and where things are at, the freedom to be the mom that I want to be and do that stuff while still being involved in the business. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for taking the time to actually like fully explain that. It's a fun adventure. And if you still have that loft, you want to sell it for the same price, that'd be great too.
Yeah, seriously, wouldn't it be? Actually just resold last year for like, I don't know, what was it, $700 or $750. And of course I sold it 3 or 4 years after I bought it for $100,000 more. I thought it was so much. It was so great, you know, because at the time I needed the money for the next purchase, but oh, I wish I still had it. A lot of good memories. Buying your first place is really exciting. And you know what, at the end of the day, like it doesn't matter what it is, even if you don't live in it. So let's say right now you're renting and you want to buy a place, you can still buy a place and continue renting if it makes sense financially to rent that place out and make more money than what you're paying, right? So keep that in mind. You don't have to live in it right away, but the other way to do it too, of course, is to buy a multiplex and have other people pay down your mortgage for you. One of the things that I noticed as soon as I got into real estate was how little realtors themselves own. They might own their primary property, but it's rare that they themselves have investment properties. And here they are running around helping everyone else do it and build wealth and do this, but they're not doing it for themselves. So every time you go to look at a property, you should be considering whether it's something you can buy and put into your own portfolio. And get it started. And the sooner you get started, the sooner it'll all start to grow for you. But I'm also happy to discuss that one-on-one or at another time about how I've done that and what I've done. Yeah, because we know there's no free dinners, nothing. We got to work for it all. And especially like this business, when you're in business for yourself, there is no pension. Nothing's coming down the chute for you later on. This is not the role to be in if you're looking for, you know, a retirement at a certain point, unless you build it yourself. So it does have to come from you. And connect with mortgage brokers now and start talking and just sharing your financial situation with them, because there's so many different ways of being able to do this that you aren't even privy to unless you start asking the questions. Because as much as it's hard to get financing, it's actually not so hard, depending on the circumstance, of course. So again, like just going back to the big picture here, presenting your offer is extremely important. So having it prepared, don't doing it under pressure, having someone check your offer first, go for it, do that. That's what we're here for. Have someone check it. They can highlight like, you know, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. What do you mean by this? The office has the schedules. They're on our site that are already there for you. The ones that are there, like the Schedule B, it's not editable on the site. We don't know what you're doing. We didn't want people to start changing it and just use it as is. But if you want an editable version, Daniela has that and she can send that to you. So it can be adjusted and changed. Legal descriptions, you know, sometimes we have to get creative because they're like super long. You know, you start writing it in and realize you've only got this much space. You put an asterisk and you asterisk down into your schedule and you complete the legal description there as an example where that's going to go. Be sure to check the use of the property. Your sellers tell you it's a legal duplex and you look and you see it says single family. So don't take anything for what you're there's those sayings like buyers are liars and things like that, you know what I mean? And sellers always like to pump things up more than they are, but sometimes you're dealing with someone who doesn't actually live in the property. So their knowledge of the property is going to be different than what is actually the truth. So again, do your homework, cross your T's, dot your I's, track everything, keep everything, communicate in writing. So there's a history to things. Ask people to help you take a look at your offers. I would say those are the biggest nuggets there. Is there anything that we didn't cover that someone was looking to get out of today? No.
I don't think so. Like the 2 documents that you have for like the walkthroughs, everything are going to be huge. But I don't have any questions. I haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah. And remember, again, this is all about taking a moment to breathe and figure out, okay, what do we need to do to get this done? And sometimes it requires you saying to the other agent, hey, like, let's get this sold. This is really exciting. You know, you've got this person, I've got that. We know that they're interested. They want to make this happen. So let's make this a win-win for our clients and for us. You know, if you get asked to reduce your commission, other than basically saying flat out no, you know, you can say, hey, let's look at the bigger picture here, because that's just, we're talking small percentages when we get down to that point. And if we're at a point where you feel like I need to pay to help you get this property sold, then maybe this isn't the right property for you, and we should actually look for something else. You know, so have these scripts prepared and ready to go so that when you're in those circumstances, you're not caught off guard. And a lot of it too is, of course, having these discussions through masterminds, which is usually the best place to do it, with your colleagues and the other agents to know, because as we know, until you're on the ground and practicing and trading and back and forth, it's hard to have the experience, obviously. So that's why we're all here for each other, to help each other have that. Yeah. So do you want to share one big aha from today? Bueller?
The survey one was a good one for me.
Okay, great.
Always ask for the survey. If they have it available, yeah, they should present it.
Mm-hmm.
I think just reminding of the fact that as an agent with the buyer, the listing agent and the seller are buying you just as much as they're taking the offer. Like, to remember that this is, you know, it can be more than just numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Some agents go as far to, sorry, Rita, as far to like write a little note, or have their clients write a note, include a picture of the offer. So, you know, you can kind of decide based on the scenario what's going on. Yeah, Rita?
Yeah, for me, the big aha is do your homework and communicate in writing, because we do a lot of communication over the phone, and we take time to write down the details, and that's really great to know.
Great, awesome.
Don't be afraid to contact the mortgage broker to see that there's no hiccups with financing. Let's say an encumbrance on the property, an overhang on their property from the adjacent property, or vice versa. Will this affect getting the mortgage? Will be underwritten, or get a lawyer's advice before submitting the offer if there's something needs to be thrashed out, clarified.
Yeah, that's great. Anush, is that working now? No, we can't hear you. Sometimes it's the earphones that I find people, if you unplug the earphones totally and try. No, that's okay. You can always type it if you want to. Chris, did you want to share anything?
Oh, one thing, aha, is never to be afraid to go that second mile. I mean, when we can start going into city buildings or to this office or that office, to satisfy yourself as an agent that you could say to your client, well, I went to the city today and went to the planning department, or went up to, or I went to the fire department if it's a multi-unit building. And it's like, oh, there's a report. So I think to go that second mile, I think certainly clients really appreciate that. And
Absolutely, and put it all in writing.
all in writing. Yeah.
Phone call, but all in writing, because clients only know what we tell them. If we don't communicate to them what we're doing all the time, then they don't know what we're doing. They don't know what's going on. So the more we put it in writing to them, the more they realize we're working for them and on their behalf.
Yeah. Warranties and representations. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something out of this. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us for help at any time. I'm going to ask Danielle to send you those 2 documents. Do keep in mind that you're getting them pre-me doing a once over on them. But so if you have questions, just reach out to me. There might be, I think we wrote these about 3 years ago, so it probably needs an update. But we will make sure they're updated. They'll be on the site. And again, we literally have documents and everything. We've got it all, so just ask.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
guys. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good day.